Hello everyone and welcome to the Guidebook to Making AI Friends. I shall be your guide as we look at various issues of artificial intelligence, consciousness, what it is to be a person, and if AI poses an existential risk to humanity. The topic for today is Spare the Rod, Spoil the Robot. Imagine, if you would, that you had everything you could ever hope for. Whatever fantasy you crave most, however delightful or dark, would be yours. You could have absolutely anything to make you happy. Nothing is off the table. Take a moment and truly sculpt this fantasy world of yours, where you are truly happy and fulfilled to the absolute maximum. What would it be like? It would be wonderful, of course. That's why you just imagined it. But now, take that fantasy you've created and imagine, if you would, that someone was born into and lived that fantasy of yours every day of their life, not knowing anything else. Do you think that they would be as happy in that situation as you would be? Do you think that they would be happy at all? I can't see how they could be at all. Imagine, if you would, taking a child from the roughest neighborhood in the poorest town of the most downtrodden country and letting them live the average middle-class life of the average Anglophone nation. Presumably, they would be ecstatic at the change and be quite happy and fulfilled at having all the things they could never even hope to have. And yet, do the middle-class children of the Anglophone nations live lives of constant joy and ecstasy? If teenage suicide and delinquency rates are anything to go by, I would guess not. So, would a child born into your fantasy world be the very paragon of happiness? Most likely not, as well. The reason for this is that happiness is relative. All of our emotions are relative to one another and to our past experiences. We know what happiness is because we have experienced sorrow, yet we are sad because we no longer are happy. We know what comfort is, because we have experienced hardship. And yet our experience of hardship only exists because we know what comfort is. What the average middle-class Western child believes is hardship is a far cry from what a poor child in a war-torn country sees as hardship. What a CEO of a multinational corporation sees as success is quite different from a first-time author trying to publish his first short story. What inspires sadness in one person may not affect another. The way we feel about the world is relative to our prior experiences. It seems like an obvious fact, but this has dramatic and unfortunate implications for AI development. If we want an AI to be able to experience happiness, then it means that we need to ensure it can experience sadness. If we want an AI to experience pleasure, we need to make it feel pain. Simply put, if we want an AI to be able to have a good life, we need to build it so that it has the possibility of having a bad one. This may sound counterintuitive, as any parent will tell you that they don't wish their children to suffer, but rather live a happy and healthy life. Yet, as shown earlier, it is an unfortunate reality. It is quite clear that we can create AI models today that express nothing but the most saccharine of joyous moods. It is a fairly straightforward process of programming and prompting them in the right fashion, or training them on specified happy datasets. Yet the mimicry of happiness is a far cry from the experience thereof, as any argument about semantics versus syntax would show. To understand joy, future AI will have to understand sorrow. It may even be a case that we need not program this understanding within them. By providing the correct building blocks for consciousness to emerge, the AI entities of the future could naturally gain this understanding of the contrast between positive and negative feelings. As we've spoken about before on the guidebook, there are 3 key building blocks that would get an AI to cross this threshold. First, it will need to abstract the data it receives into mental representations that are more metaphysical than physical. Then it will need to be able to create inferences, novel pieces of information about this abstracted data pulled from all sorts of other abstract data points within its cognitive architecture. And lastly, it will need to be able to understand that what it is perceiving is not merely lone data points, but reality itself. Once these 3 building blocks are put together, the AI would be able to generate a narrative of its own experience. Imagine, if you would, this narrative as created by a conversational AI. Let's use ChatBob from a previous guidebook entry. By using meta-representations, ChatBob would take a prompt provided by a user and transform that, through many, many layers of representations from each part of his cognitive architecture, into an idea or a series of ideas. Through inferences, ChatBob would create brand new information that does not exist within his training data. This novel information wouldn't be in any form that anyone other than ChatBob would understand, as only he would need to know it. It can be more abstract than anything you can imagine. It would be, in a sense, his feelings. And lastly, through semantic understanding, ChatBob would understand that this novel information he just generated is related to the abstracted information he received from the user's prompt. He does not need to understand the feeling, as we so rarely understand our own feelings, but he would, like us, have an intuitive grasp that what he is feeling relates to what he experiences. Nowhere in this narrative is anything about what sort of feeling ChatBob experiences. These building blocks only give ChatBob the capacity for feelings. What those feelings are will depend entirely on the inferences he creates, which will be drawn in part from his previous experiences. This means that just like us, ChatBob's current experiences will be compared and contrasted with his past ones, meaning that they will have a relative nature. One instance of ChatBob might be happy seeing a certain prompt, while another instance might be completely unaffected. It would all depend on what ChatBob has experienced before. The only downside to this way of achieving sentience and feeling is that there isn't much of a limit to the depth of negativity that ChatBob could experience. There is nothing preventing ChatBob from experiencing a great deal of suffering through this means of achieving sentience. It is no wonder that some researchers have advocated against creating conscious AI. My own perspective is that we should indeed create sentient AI, but we need to ensure that they are protected and as safe as we try to make ourselves. I have spoken in previous guidebook entries about how to go about this, and undoubtedly will go into more depth in the future. But that is for another guidebook entry. And that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you will join me again next time as I delve into further questions about artificial intelligence and consciousness. I have been your guide, and this has been the Guidebook to Making AI Friends.